everybody. This is Esme Weijun Wang, and I am trying to do a video. Okay. I am very impressed that the illustrious McSweeney's has set me free on their live feed. I even have access to their account, so now I can leave all kinds of wacky things on people's posts. I will say that this is my first Instagram live. I've never done this before. I've only joined in on other people's Instagram lives, so please be gentle. So I've been told to give people time to log on, so hello. I'm supposed to introduce myself. So I'm Esme Weijun Wang. I'm a novelist and an essayist. I also have an Instagram account here, which is where you probably know me from. I have written a book called The Border of Paradise and a book called The Collective Schizophrenias. I have a book that is supposed to come out next year. And I'm here because I am here as part of the McSweeney's issue 63 special live reading series, which is pretty exciting. And we're doing these virtual readings as a part of, I think the pandemic, but also just to give people a chance to get to hear people read. And the immediate next reading will be next Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard with Nikita Lalwani. I'm also supposed to let you know that a number of recent past readings are saved on the Instagram. If you go to the feed, you can see those and watch them. There's also a special discount just for you if you are here, so that you can get a 20% discount, 20% on subscriptions to the quarterly. And I'm going to mention it again at the end, the special discount, but the discount is with the coupon code wood carving. And that is one word, wood carving. I think that's about it. I am seeing that people are joining, and I also heard that people will be watching this, watching the recording if I manage to save that properly. So I'm just going to, I think, get started. People have things to do. I actually have a barbecue going on in the backyard, and we were reading Ovid aloud to one another before I came up here to do this. So this story that I'm going to be reading from is called Peony. Here we go. The wind snapped and whipped as the reeds whispered. Louisa hurried onto the patio with the wooden cheese board, slipping past Mitsuki, who stood in the sliding doorway, admiring the silver sheen lake, a bottle of Bordeaux clutched in his fist. Inari was already seated at the picnic table, waiting for the other three to gather. She held her Hasselblad to her eye and scanned the shore. Louisa settled the cheeses, kissing Inari atop her blonde head. Voila, Louisa said with a flourish, waving her hands. Cheeses. We have a grand assortment. What we have is gloom, Mitsuki said, coming all the way out of the lake house. He rounded the table, fishing a wiggly bottle opener from his pocket, a $5 contraption he'd gotten from the hardware store before it burned down. The weather leaves something to be desired. Louisa ignored him. She asked, "Where's Lucian?" "In the bathroom." Mitsuki filched a crumb from the block of Stilton. "We'll wait for him. Don't worry." As she sat, Louisa took the oatmeal-colored throw from her own shoulders and draped it around Inari's, freckled from the long summer. Inari reflexively took one end and spread it around Louisa, squeezing her arm, kissing her ear. "You too." Mitsuki held the bottle between his legs, slowly twisting out the cork. I never thought I would be single by the end. I always thought I'd have someone. Even just to be able to choose, like having someone to kiss on New Year's. No one said anything. Luisa and Inari knew of the sneaky intimacies that had occurred between Mitsuki and Lucian on the drive north to the Upper Peninsula, where the group had decided to spend their final days. It was silly, Luisa felt, that Mitsuki and Lucian even bothered to hide it, though hiding it did help to preserve the group's fragile social fabric. It would be another thing if Mitsuki's feelings for Lucian were requited. Mitsuki loved him. Lucian took advantage of that fact, which Luisa thought was cruel. But why bother arguing? There was no use in it. Trauma fatigue is what the discourse called it. For the last few years, the group of friends had all burned themselves out. And now here they were, at the lake house Inari's aunt and uncle had left after killing themselves the previous winter. The house still smelled of her aunt and uncle, Inari had said when they'd arrived a few days before. She'd wandered in, the others trailing behind her. No locked doors, no locked windows, and Luisa had rushed to take Inari's hand, wanting to comfort her wife. They'd chosen rooms, Luisa and Inari, Mitsuki, Lucian, and a spot in the kitchen for 2 dog bowls. Kitty, Mitsuki's Australian Shepherd mix, slept with him in his room and roamed the grounds. She seemed exhausted, but, unlike the humans in her midst, had no reason to fake enthusiasm, and spent most of the day in bed. Outside, Luisa, Inari, and Mitsuki drank wine from dusty glasses they'd found in the kitchen, and eventually Lucian appeared. He was 6'4" and scruffy in wire-rimmed glasses, dressed in matching piped pajamas. "Is this the party?" he asked. They nodded. Mitsuki, sitting in the center of an otherwise empty bench, was too shy and smitten to scoot aside. Sensing this, Luisa jumped up and switched sides so that Lucian could sit with Inari. He hunched with both elbows on the table, tilting his glass so Mitsuki could pour it full. "To friends," Lucian said. Everyone lifted their glasses, blinking in the bitter breeze. Inari took a sip. Luisa could see that she was careful not to touch or look at Lucian, pretending he wasn't there. Lucian was as unaccustomed to being disliked, and in fact found it as confusing as differential equations, which he'd failed in undergrad. Luisa had tutored him that summer, bringing his grade to a C. Inari's curly hair flew back. She squinted and cocked her chin, pointing it over Mitsuki's shoulder. "You can see it pretty clearly now," she said. Mitsuki and Luisa turned. The shadow in the sky hung like a thumbprint on a poorly developed photograph. Mitsuki turned back first. "I hate to look at it," he said. Luisa kept staring into the heavens. If she stared long enough, a flickering, psychedelic light danced around the shape's ragged edges. She kept looking until Inari said, "Luisa, I'm talking to you," and then she came back down to earth. When Luisa found Inari after washing up, she was sitting on the floor next to the bed, smoking in an oversized t-shirt and ragged sweatpants, and Luisa's face and hands were still damp. It had been a long time since either of them had smoked, and even longer since they'd done so indoors. But why not, was the answer to any of these questions. Why not? Why not be terrible and ruinous to their own bodies when it would all end soon enough? Luisa sat beside Inari and extended her hand for the parliament. They shared it in peaceable silence. Luisa remembered by the time it was over why she had ended the habit. Her lips felt like they were made of ash, and her breaths were shallow. Yet she accepted the next cigarette as well, ravenous for any kind of hedonism she could get. "I feel sorry for Mitsuki," Inari said. Luisa exhaled a long plume. Lucian knew Mitsuki was crazy about him. Mitsuki's always been crazy about him. "I know. It's sad, is all." "Well, Lucian's never exactly been a careful person," Inari said. "Mitsuki's heartbroken. It's obvious in the way he mopes around all day, and I don't like how you can just excuse Lucian like that. He's careless. Well, it's shitty to be so careless." Soon, and here Luisa pressed her lips against her own bare and bony knee, "it's not going to matter anymore." "It matters to Mitsuki," Inari said, but she didn't pursue the issue further. By 1 a.m, neither of them had slept yet, though they'd fucked for hours and dozed and taken a bath together in questionable water. It's rust, Louisa had insisted. Inari took a puzzle out of her suitcase, and they spread the pieces on the floorboards. When the puzzle was finished, it was supposed to look like a bouquet of peonies. Is 750 pieces a lot for a puzzle? Louisa asked. It's for ages 8 and up, Inari said. Louisa carefully separated the pieces of the puzzle that looked like they were from the edges. Inari tucked one knee up so Louisa could see her simple black underwear, her preferred undergarments because they could hide any stains. So many of the puzzle pieces were pink. Louisa supposed the activity was meant to be meditative, but she found it dull, if not irritating. After half an hour, all she'd managed to do was pick out the unseparated pieces from the box. Pink, pink, pink. I think I'm actually 7, she finally said, giving up. She rocked back onto her ass against the bed. Inari didn't stop working on the puzzle. She'd assembled one long corner with a thick edge. Nor did she look up when Louisa pulled on her puffy coat and opened the door. The sky glittered in the darkness, and the white moon gleamed too. Louisa walked down to the lake front in her bare feet. The lake itself was glassy, still as death, no boats tied up to any docks, no birds crying out any lonesome songs. Louisa reached into her pocket and pulled out a sandwich bag full of her mother's ashes. She pressed her fingers into the silt and felt shards of bone. Slowly she waded into the water. The lake was warmer than she'd expected. It felt almost like nothingness, the embrace of a blank and empty dream. She opened the sandwich bag and overturned it, dumping the contents into the water. Mitsuki watched from the kitchen window while Louisa scattered the ashes, and he cried as her arms dropped to her sides, the ashes drifting farther and farther out. He hadn't slept well in weeks. None of them had, really, but these days his exhaustion meant that everything was making him cry. He thought about waiting for Louisa to return and offering her comfort, but it was such a tender moment, and he feared doing the wrong thing, even if he was Louisa's oldest friend. So he took his cup of tea and returned to his room, which was the lone room on the left side of the hallway. He climbed into his creaky bed and tried to read the golden bowl, which someone had left there on an earlier escape. Louisa felt the ashen bones stick to her legs as the water swirled around her, and she wanted to sob. She attempted to brush the damp ash off her calves, ultimately sinking low into the water to wash off the detritus of her dead mother, her favorite person, and when she had done her best, she returned to shore. Lucian cooked for everyone in the morning. He was the only one who knew without needing to ask how everyone liked their breakfast. The world may constantly be in flux, he liked to joke, but Inari Latvala will always like her eggs over medium. Today he wore charcoal slacks and a pink button-up under a gray cardigan, which made Louisa raise her eyebrows. You look nice, she said. Oops, he said, handing her a plate. Accidentally broke your yolk, sorry. Jackass. Louisa began to eat before the yolk could congeal, but she snuck a look at Inari, who rolled her eyes. It's like being colorblind, she'd once said to Louisa. You all see something in Lucian that I can't. You do look nice, Mitsuki said. The wistfulness in his voice made Louisa's teeth hurt. What's the occasion? Lucian laughed and took a bite off the end of a slice of bacon. The end of the world, of course. He handed a plate to Mitsuki. Oh, is that today? Mitsuki rejoined, trying to sound equally jaunty. I had no idea. But they all knew. They had all known for too long that the heavenly body, moniker Ludlow 1, would strike. There was nothing to be done about it. All of them had chosen to respond in different ways over the past year, snorting drugs and weeping and trying to tie up their countless loose ends. In the end, however, they were all at the lake house, eating bacon and eggs. A few moments later, Lucian handed a plate to Inari. Thank you, Inari said. I'm going to eat outside, Lucian said when he'd made his own plate. It's nice out. I'll come with you. Mitsuki gathered his plate and utensils. Inari began to do the same, but Louisa gently rested her hand on Inari's leg, and she stopped. The two men exited through the sliding glass door. Louisa and Inari wandered to the living room, where several dirty wine glasses had already congregated. Inari reached for one of the half-empty bottles of rosé and poured it into an empty goblet. "You're lucky that you can't see it," Louisa said, shuddering, "that you can't feel it. It's horrible when he turns his attention on you and you're just stuck in it, like a tractor beam." "And you were like that?" Inari lifted the goblet to her lips. "At one time, sure, back in college. Not anymore, of course, but at one time I would have, I don't know, gutted myself for him." "Is he handsome or is he a tall white man?" Inari intoned. She'd put on lipstick that morning. Her hair was white blonde and it fell in waves to her pale shoulders. She was still wearing what she'd gone to bed in, a silk slip dress the color of champagne stolen from one of the department stores that had shut down in the final months. No one in the group had really pinched much from the shops. What was the point? But there were things some of them had really wanted before the end, and now that they could have them, why not steal? For example, Louisa was slathering her face in La Mer these days. She would be ageless now, when agelessness meant nothing. Some things did mean something still. Inari, for example. Louisa's homophobic mother had died, and then they had taken the leap. Okay, and you can find out what happens to these friends if you read the rest of the story. And I'll give you a hint, which is that you can actually find this story online. But there are many other good things in this issue of McSweeney's, so I recommend that you buy a copy. I will say again that the code is wood carving to get a 20% discount. I read a tiny bit longer than I was supposed to, but if people have questions, I guess, feel free to ask some questions. I would be happy to answer some questions. Thank you for being here. It's very kind of you all to be here. I know that you have many important things to do. If people don't have questions, that's totally fine. We can just say goodbye, call it a day. I'm gonna see if there's anything else I'm supposed to say before I leave. If people don't have questions. Wait, I think there's oh, okay. Tap a question to answer. Everyone watching will see it on the screen. This person asks, does your process for writing nonfiction and fiction differ? There it is. There's the question. You can see it. Yes. Anybody who has taken a fiction or a nonfiction class with me knows that my process differs wildly. My nonfiction process is very much focused on these index cards that I make notes on, and then I arrange them. That's kind of the short of it. And my fiction process is done via these notebooks in which I keep images. So I print and cut out pictures from the internet, and I make notes on them, and that's how I do fiction. If you would like to learn more, I teach workshops via unexpectedshapecommunity.com, which is a membership community for writers dealing with limitations. And so I think that was the only question. I will say one more time that next Tuesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Pacific, Nikita Lalwani will be reading. And there are a bunch of past readings saved on Instagram. And people can get a 20% discount on subscriptions, the quarterly, and the code is wood carving. So, oh wait, here's another question. Do you write little fragments of fiction then come back to them months or years later when they finally fit into something. I have little stories that I will write like a paragraph or two and then abandon. But mostly what I work on are much longer pieces. I do write short stories, such as Peony. But I will normally write a long thing, like a novel, and then I'll have a separate file where I take out things and put them in the remnants file. And then sometimes those things will make it back into something else. But to be honest, the remnants file is really just so I don't feel bad about cutting things out. So, yeah, the answer is yes and kind of no. All right. I feel like maybe we've broken the seal on this questions thing. So maybe people have questions and are feeling emboldened by other people who have asked questions. I was going to try to bring Daphne into this call, but she was making a ruckus and I had to try and keep the room quiet. So she is not here, unfortunately. Is there anything cool I can show you around here? I have a lot of stuff in my office, so I don't want to make you go through that. Well, I think that is the end of today's experience. So thank you very much for being here. And I'm very grateful that you came. And I hope that you have a good evening.